But yeah, Vince will be making the first announcement.
All right. Provided to us from Philip. I'll let you guys read it instead of me calling it out. I'll just give you a moment to read it.
Oh, Philip, you should come in.
Yeah, so this was a conference I attended. A number of people, a lot of European devs attended. Clay Mackel was at the conference. I don't know if Clay is going to go again, but Clay was incredible. I don't know if many of you were at Full Access and have been at conferences where Clay has attended. He's incredibly generous with his time and gracious and answers questions no matter how complex or simple the questions are. He's just a great person all around when it comes to a representative of Claris. So anyway, I'll post these links in the chat, and it's a great location as well. They have like 3 rooms. It's in the museum quarter. It's in Vienna. In general, lots of great places to eat. It's a great location, and this is kind of, dovetailing off of the inspiration that .fmp was for a lot of people in Europe. Kevin, I think you were at the .fmp event. I don't remember if you were also at this event last year. But
no, unfortunately, life intervened. I had bought my ticket and then I had to not go. But I was,
okay.
.fmp is sorely missed, and I look forward to getting out to Vienna. Although I don't think I can do it this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some great presentations. I remember getting inspired by a number of people who presented. Hansa was there as well. There was, I forget his name, the really tall guy from Square Moon, I think. Jan, I think it was, and he gave an interesting presentation about, you take it for granted, but that option for indexing, automatically index fields when needed. Well, they have a best practice where they actually turn that off for all their fields that they create. By default, it's off. So it's purposely turned on when they decide to turn it on. So it's an interesting approach, and he was doing all kinds of presentations with regards to performance and indexes. So anyway, that was one of the highlights of the conference. It was really great.
Was that Johan Hedman?
No, it wasn't Johan. It was Jan.
Right.
I don't remember his last name. So, that's it.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess our second announcement is... Oh, what is it? Oh, well, actually, Rick Kalman's here, actually. I don't know if he wants to give the announcement, or I have it written down to go ahead and give it here right now.
Yeah, I can do it at a high level, and then I can put a link in. So essentially, if you haven't heard, we're doing a survey related to the Claris Engage 2027 event. So we are essentially right now planning for Engage 2027. It's going to be a 3-day in-person destination hotel like the old DevCons, slated at this point for late May of 2027. It'll be a similar format to previous developer conferences when we went to the resort hotels. It'll be 3 days in the middle of the week. There will be a keynote address. There'll probably be a training day prior to the first day. It will not be over the weekend. Regarding the hotel, if we have too many people and need overflow, or if people are looking for another hotel, there's apparently a number of conveniently accessed hotels around there. So if people are looking for a better price, perhaps, or it overflows, which would be a good problem for us, maybe not for you all trying to attend, then that is available as well. They have not yet told me where it is. They're being pretty coy about that, other than it's easily accessible to get to. And so I don't know what state it's in. All I know is it is a resort hotel. And so in order to help us determine how many people are we looking at would potentially come, we've put out a survey. We put that out in the Claris Community, bringing it to this user group. I am presenting it tomorrow at FM Disc. I got on FM Live TV yesterday, talked about it, and sent it all to the user groups as well. Douglas Wallace covered Europe, so I didn't send it to Europe. So anyway, I'm going to put the link into the survey. It's a real straightforward one-page survey using Studio, and that's the god-awfully long link.
Yeah. Why is that? Why are those links so long?
I've already got a couple of requests for developer quality of life enhancement, which is, cannot we have a shorter link to FM Studio? And so that's been logged. They're looking at it, and yeah, because no one who wants to share that.
It's kind of funny because it's longer than a UUID, right?
Yeah, it looks like some sort of token or some sort of encrypted thing there, but anyway, they're looking at it. Yeah, I got a couple of requests for that. So anyway, that's the announcement. So if you can go and fill out the survey, we're looking to get a sense of how many people can we anticipate, because that really determines the block that you have to reserve for the hotel. And as John Howell knows, who I talked to the other day, once you commit to a block, it can be expensive.
Oh yeah, we know.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, Rick, do you know, or are you able to share what your target head count is?
We would like to have at least 1,000. We have typically, back in the day, done 1,000 up to 1,400. Very rarely in the latter days that we dip below 1,000. However, post-pandemic and in this era of politics, how many people will actually come from Europe, from Canada, from South America into the U.S. So we have that factor to look at. So there's always some extenuating circumstance, right, that we have to deal with. But and of course, I talked to John, and I put it on the Slack for full access. But John was very helpful in helping me think about some of these things. I can give feedback to Julie, who's doing a lot of the coordination on there. So thanks for that, John. The EMEA thing alone was definitely worth the conversation.
All right.
Well, I can speak for all of us in Kentucky that we would like you to try Nashville again.
Oh man, I've never been. I was so unhappy that that one got canceled.
Yeah.
And
Two-
that, yeah. Was it two?
That we're supposed to be in Nashville?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know of at least one, but
I could have driven.
And Mass. We could commute daily.
It's not that far.
the real problem was that over 50% of past attendees said they would not attend because it was right after COVID. So I think, the world was still trying to figure out travel and all that kind of stuff. So it was such a drastic, you can do the Apple campus at that number, but we've a couple of years there. We heard loud and clear that people want to go back to the old DevCon style resort hotel, everyone in the same place because of all the networking potentials and just the ability to interact with people is I would contend at least 50%, if not 60% of the value of a DevCon or Engage is the ability to interact with so many talented people. I mean, a lot, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, right? So I know it's a highlight of my year every year. So.
Yeah, a number of us would love it if you would hold it at a Silmar down in Monterey. That would be our dream location. It's driving distance from Apple and Claris headquarters.
Yeah.
And I should have it at Pajaro,
That
too.
number of people, though, right?
What, Alexi?
Is it really big enough for that number of people?
Nah, it's only about like 250, isn't it?
Well, it'll has a room that'll hold 1,200 people, but they only have a sleeping room for 313 people.
Yeah.
But they do have a
campus.
lot of neighboring stuff, though.
Yeah, a lot of hotels in the neighborhood.
Still, I don't think that would cut it.
Yeah, I know.
Rick, did I hear you say Julie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Julie Sigfridius?
Yes.
She's retired.
Okay.
She's no longer employee, but
she's
we
bad at
contract with her.
retirement.
Oh.
Yeah, she's terrible. Andy Lacates is much better at retirement than.
No. That's because he made it explicit when he left. He says, I don't want to do Julie. So
Again. All right. So we do have a third announcement. And see, Tail, right after that, there's not going to be, just like you heard, there's not going to be a Claris Engage this year, but there will be a premier FileMaker conference in the US this year called Full Access. It's your Engage fix for 26 is what we call it. It's going to be August 6th through the 10th. That's how many days is that? 5 days? 4 days? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10?
Well, it's a full 4 days and a half, actually. The half is kind of a slowdown. And then there's a premier option. Some people are paying a little extra money coming the night before to be part of the production team.
Wednesday even,
Extra night and a couple meals.
So it's going to be a Thursday through Monday. It's going to be in Los Altos, California again. Just a few short miles from Claris headquarters again, which was key to getting Claris to show up last year. And now, due to the success of Full Access 25, not only is Claris going to show up in force this year with multiple engineers, I'm told, but this time they're an official sponsor. So in fact, you can open up the conference webpage right now. Here, let's see, I can do that. Yes, can you see that? And if you scroll down to the bottom, there we've got Claris, Monkey Bread. Guess who's showing up, by the way? David Simpson. I think he's here right now tonight, right? He's FM Program Migrators as a sponsor, and even DIGFM is not a sponsor so much, but a contributor. Let me tell you what that's about. We do that in a reciprocal way. It's like all a meetup has to do to be a contributor is to promote Full Access each month and to send a couple representatives to Full Access 26. And if we get enough DIGFM people to attend, I'm going to call it an in-person DIGFM reunion. And then those meetup representatives get to host at least one live stream session from Los Altos to their audience back at home, wherever they happen to be, even in New Zealand. And I think Darren did show up to the live stream we did in 25. Let's see.
Eric?
Yeah?
There's several more companies still considering sponsoring, even with this list.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's nice to have these guys on the list, and let's see, what else do I got? You if you happen to have a meetup and you want to kind of contribute, we can set you up with a session to live stream while you're there. And speaking of sessions, they've already got sessions planned. This is, we call it an unconference because this is organized by by developers, but most of our sessions are planned, unlike Vienna. so you can check that out. New ones being added each week, new attendees each week, which is by the way, you can, if you go to the register, I'll let you go check out the prices there. But if those prices aren't just quite good enough for you, tonight we do have a $150 discount code that you can use for the next few months. I'll put that in the chat when I'm done yapping here. And let's see what else. Let's take a look at the attendees here, right? We've got these new people added here every week. And hey, look who we got. Kevin Frank. Yeah, he was our special guest tonight. He did attend Full Access 25, and he was an outstanding and generous participant, and he is already registered for Full Access 26 in Los Altos, California. So welcome, Kevin Frank, from Arcata. Is that how you pronounce it?
We call it Arcata.
Arcata, California.
It's actually not a Spanish word. It's a Native American word.
Oh, okay.
So
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, I got a great idea. Let me share my screen. I am sharing my screen. And I'm also going to put my phone on vibrate. Hang on. Let's stand by, please. There we go. All right. Well, I'm gonna just bang through a few slides. It's not gonna be a whole lot of PowerPoint, but I did want to show a couple things here. Yeah, so tips and tricks. I've got a really large number of them, so we'll get through what we can. And this is me. I'm up here in Arcata, California, a leisurely 350 or 360 mile drive north of Claris headquarters, up 101, behind the Redwood Curtain. A little bit about me. So I've been doing this full time for more than 30 years. And I'm the technical lead on the Codance Genesis Transactions product. I have a blog. I've just recently passed my 300th article. Been around for going on 16 years now. And that's the blog, of course. That's me a little while ago, and when there was a little bit less of me. And so I got a few goals: fast-paced and no long-winded code explanations. Something for everyone, all killer, no filler. Let's have fun. But please remember, although I'm using a Mac right now, I am a Windows user. So if you have any questions, use simple words and speak or type very slowly. Okay, let's get started with a simple example. So what I'm thinking, just kidding. Okay, resource page, FileMakerHacks.com. And if we pop over there for a second, I'll just point out. Okay. There it is. Yeah. So the home page is here, and right now you guys are number one here. If you want to come back later, like, I don't really remember, it was sometime early in 2026, just come over to the table of contents. So try to keep this always up to date. So this is actually how I mainly find things, because a lot of times I can't remember the title. But I'll just, I think that was about 2012 I did that. So yeah, got a lot going on here. And I'll try not to overly promote my blog, but I will say that a lot of what I'm showing, I have links to corresponding articles here. And there will be demo files based on which things I actually show today. And then later this meeting, right, we'll have a link here. So this will change a little over the coming days. And enough about that. So my first tip and trick is actually about PowerPoint itself and about an annoyance that I have. So let's jump in here, and I'm going to take my slides and I'm going to change that PPS extension to PPT. Why would I do that? Because now when I double click it, I can edit it. So then, which leads me to my next thing. A pet peeve of mine is when the apostrophe gets misused. And one of the problems is when you type an apostrophe, Microsoft products and many other products will decide that should be an opening quotation mark instead. But it's not. That should be an apostrophe. It should curve exactly the same as this one. So simple trick when this happens, type it twice. I'm going to type it a second time there and then delete the earlier one. So just a way to get around that annoyance if you want to have proper punctuation, if you care about those things. We don't need to say that. All right. Well, so I work a lot with JSON, and one thing that happened when 22 came out was we got this massive performance boost. Absolutely massive. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and just show a couple things about it. So this was a demo that I built, and the idea, I'm not going to, again, not long-winded code explanation, but what I wanted to do was this has 750 nodes, so it's an array of objects, and each object has an @ID. This is the schema or some of the schema for something called JSON LD, in case you're curious about this. So I just thought, okay, for fun, let's sum the lengths of all the IDs. Okay. So I came along here and I did this, and it was really slow. Okay. It took 11.5 seconds. And that was in FileMaker 21 with me doing while this way. So then, Josh Willing and Steve Samterera pointed out that I was cache busting and I should instead do all the work in a single JSON object. This was something we really needed to worry about back in the pre-22 days. So by doing you see, there's a very slight difference, right? I was breaking out the object, and then I was doing work on the object, and then I had to keep coming back to this to get the next object. So I was bouncing back and forth between two different JSON structures. And it was only caching one of them. So when I changed the code just a little and started just attacking the one object over and over again, it cut the processing time in half. But that was still in 21. So then somebody pointed out that you could do this really simple trick. Instead of just taking the input, which was JSON, you could wrap it in JSON get element quote quote like that. So you're like, well, it's just giving you back what you've already got. But no, it was forcing FileMaker to cache it and hold on to that cache. So suddenly we got about a 10 times increase in performance speed. But again, that was still in 21. So then we get up here to 22. And if I do the old method, clear, dupe, let it run, and okay, so it took 2. So that was still faster than that was about twice as fast as what we saw a moment ago. And then the question was, well, will it get any faster if I keep it to a single object? And I believe the answer to that is no. Yeah, see, it's about the same, right? So because now FileMaker will cache multiple objects. So then the question became, well, what if you do that trick of forcing FileMaker to cache that input? 20 milliseconds. So effectively what we've got there is the new JSON parse function. JSON parse says, cache this. So if you do something else that caches it, you'll get the same benefit. Okay, so about the same, 18 versus 20. And so yeah, so just across the board, we're getting this massive performance boost with JSON, whether or not we use JSON parse. But we've got JSON parse to turbocharge it under appropriate circumstances. So as an example of the difference, I've opened this this same demo. It's exactly the same. I mean, there might be a few records difference because it auto creates them at startup. But and to show the difference, I don't know how many of you work with virtual lists, but for a long time I've been saying, don't do what you think would normally make sense to do because it'll be unperformant with large record counts. So what do I mean by that? So I come over here and I say, okay, I've got this 130 some thousand, and I want you to make a summary report. And behind the scenes, it's going to make some JSON, and then it's going to render that using the virtual list table. So it took me 2 seconds to encode it, 3 seconds to decode it, 5 seconds total. Before I scroll around or sort it, I just want to show what's going on in the data viewer. What's going on in the data viewer is we've got a two-dimensional array where each row represents a row here on the report. Okay, so there it is. Let's get out of there. So if I sort that, let's close that. If I sort that, it's really quick. And what's it sorting there? It's sorting 4,500 records. Okay. And if I scroll, look how zippy that is. Just scrolls right along. Now at the bottom, I've got some summary fields where it's going to have to sum these 4 columns. Even that, if I drag down here to the bottom, it takes like a quarter of a second and it pops up. So now here is the same exact report in FileMaker 21. And this is why I was saying don't use a two-dimensional JSON array, even though that's what you would naturally want to use for virtual list. I used to say for years and years, it's just too slow. So it takes about the same amount of time to generate, about the same amount of time to generate, but it's much more sluggish. So even just dragging this scroll bar, it's kind of hesitant as I pull it. It's not scrolling smoothly. If I reveal this subsummary at the bottom, it's going to take about 11 seconds that I don't want to waste. If I go to sort this, you're going to actually see a sort dialog while it thinks about sorting it. So just across the board, if you're using virtual list and you want to point it at a two-dimensional JSON array, I think it's now a good idea, and it's going to make things a lot simpler.
I have a question.
Yes.
So would this then be faster than other formatting alternatives, like just tab delimited or things like that? Or
I'll leave that as an exercise for the for the questioner. I don't have the answer off the top of my head, but what I'm saying is if you read any of my earlier articles or played around with it much yourself, some of the tricks that you might have had to use before to speed things up are no longer necessary, which puts me in mind of this T.S. Eliot quote. So let's cease from exploration, and the end of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Yeah. So I'm gonna. One of the reasons that we had the military picture of me in the World War I trenches was I had put in my original description cautionary tales from the trenches, and so I want to get a bug out of the way and just talk about it, because if you run into this bug, you can really be curious. What the heck is going on? Why is this happening to me? And so here I am in FileMaker 22, FileMaker 22, latest version, and I have a note on my relationships graph, and I'm going to tempt fate by doing a select all. What do you mean tempt fate? What's wrong with doing a select all? I just pressed Command A. I did a select all. There's nothing wrong with it in 22. What would happen if I did the same exact thing in 21? I have a post-it. See, but we're in, I want to point out, look at the title bar. We're in 21, okay? It's because I put the version up there in the title bar. I'm going to press Command A. You ready? On your mark, get set, go. It just crashed. Okay, it's gone. So if you have been like getting mysterious crashes in 21, upgrade. No, but if you're not ready to upgrade, either get the post-it notes off your graph or
Don't select all.
Don't select all. So just cautionary tale from the trench there. Yeah, okay. Multi-purpose demo. Oh, this is kind of fun. Yeah. So I've been playing years and years ago, like more than 10 years ago, I licensed a product from Ernest Code called, it was through Seed Code at the time, and it's called, what are you doing? I don't want that. It was called NinjaCal, and I ended up using it on a lot of projects. And so, let's see. So when I add items, you can see what's happening over here. It's sort of building up a little, sort of alternative summary view of what I'm choosing here. And what's really cool about NinjaCal is behind the scenes, it's one field. It's got 3,000 repetitions, but it's one field. Each of these squares is 6 rows by 7 columns. So 42, 6 times 7. And since we've got 12 of them, there's 504 squares here, not counting the special ones that are used for the days of the week and for the month of the year. And so behind the scenes, as you may have noticed, if you saw over here, it's just making a list of dates. And so there were just several things going on here that are kind of interesting. But one thing I'll point out is each of these is a button. So if we look, like here I am in the Object Inspector, if we look, my first click goes on the button. And if I click again, it will open that up and we'll see what's inside the button. I might point out each of those buttons has a different parameter on it. So one of the challenges was if I were to come through and want to change the style on the field, for instance, I could press tab. Let's see, press tab. All right, I'm not going to do that because it's not behaving the way it was earlier today. I'm going to move on and say something else. So, but let's say there's conditional formatting. The conditional formatting is going to be at the field level on the inside of the button. So that means if I want to change the conditional, let's look at the conditional formatting first. Okay. If I want to change my conditional formatting, I'll point out I got 2, right? One is formatted a certain way when the date isn't in this month, because obviously we have some February overflow at the end of January. And so we've got one thing we're saying, turn it white. And then the other thing is if the date's been selected, we're turning the text color white and the background color blue. All right, we're doing that with conditional formatting. So the issue is I cannot bulk change that conditional formatting for the simple reason that if I select all those squares, I'm getting the button definitions also. Okay. Conditional formatting is simply not available. So, and there's no way to select just the inner parts only. So what to do? Well, and imagine this became a pressing issue when the client decided he didn't like this color and he wanted a different color. And suddenly was faced with the idea of changing 504 individual conditional formats. So I thought, no, there's got to be a better way. Well, turns out that Ivan Granger at Codance has been working on something called FM Clipboard Tool. Now, this uses the Base Elements plugin, and it allows us to move FM XML in and out very easily. So, what am I talking about? Well, let's say I were to grab all of this, press Command C. Now, if I go into, say, a text editor or something and try to paste, this isn't going to go in there because this is in a special XML clipboard. But thanks to the plugin, let's make a new record here. And we'll just call this B4. Okay, I won't bother giving a description. I could use this as a library and hold things here. And now I'm going to click this and paste right here. And it just put in, I don't know how many thousands of lines, but we could value count it if we wanted to. But quite a large amount. And then, so now it's here. And I could do Command Shift F and go looking around in here. But instead, I think what I'm going to do is copy this and put it in BB Edit. So I've hit this text and now it just took the contents and put it in my regular clipboard. Okay, so I come over here to BB Edit and I paste. Okay, so now I see I got about 220 some thousand lines. Okay, well, one thing I like about BB Edit is lightning fast. So I come over here and I think what I'm going to do is just look around for the first instance of, well, there's several things I could do, right? I could browse around and look for it, but I think we're going to see it pretty quickly. And the reason we're going to see it pretty quickly is because I put those slashes in front of the descriptions of the name of the conditional formatting. So let's see. If I don't find it soon, I'll come up with a smarter way to look for it. Okay.
Just do a search, you know?
Yes, on what? On conditional. I couldn't remember what phrase I'd put there. Yeah. So there it is. So this is actually what I care about, right? I don't want to change the condition for when it's when the date is outside the month. What I want to change is this one. And as I come down here, what I find is this RGB, right? So that blue that's on there is 23% green, 80% blue, right? And I want to change that. So I'm gonna take this, right? And I'm just gonna grab this, and maybe to play it safe, I'll grab that. Okay, I'm gonna grab that, and I'm gonna tell BB Edit to take that and change it as follows. Okay, we're gonna make the red 100%. We're going to make the other two 0. Okay. There we go. Replace all. Now I'm going to select all, copy, come back over here. Let's make another record. Okay, it's a regular paste because I'm not in the XML clipboard yet. Okay, get that out of there. Now click here, and this is going to put it back into FileMaker's XML format. Let's come over here and let's go down here to demo 3 and let's paste. Okay. And now it's red instead of blue. So this was an interesting one because faced with the daunting nature of how much manual work I was going to have to do, I was very incentivized to find a tool. And I love this tool because he makes it so easy. By the way, if you don't have the base elements plugin installed, it will automatically install it for you on either platform. And Ivan's going to be blogging about this at the Codance blog. And of course, Codance and Full City are now merging. So Codance is a Full City company. So this tool will be available. And so I'd say keep your eye on the Codance blog for that. There were a couple other interesting things going on in this demo. One was, this was a kind of fun challenge. It was sort of like, build me something that's kind of like a portal, but in browse mode will have variable height rows. This was something where a web designer handed me off a prototype and said, I need you to do this in FileMaker so it looks like something we have on the web. And so a couple interesting things were going on there. One was the hanging indent. And so everybody know what a hanging indent is? It's where the first entry in the paragraph is further left. The subsequent lines of the paragraph get indented, but the first line hangs out there. See, so one was to get a hanging indent going. I mean, that's not terribly difficult, but there's one really strange gotcha involved with hanging indents. The other was to get the line to be variable height. And I will point out, this is just a field called date summary. And let's do the hanging indent first. So if I do that and I jump over to, I know. Let's do a floating inspector. You guys know that you don't have to put up with the inspector over there, right? You can put it where you want it, right? View, inspectors, new inspector. So you can have it the old way, where it's just kind of where you want it. All right, so then we can close that other one. There we go. And so if I look at these settings right here, you'll see this 36 is repeated 3 times. So we got a negative here. We got a positive here, and the tab stop. That's because on the first line, I put the entry, and then I hit tab to get the first line aligned where I want it. And then all the subsequent ones end up going here. So where this gets a little tricky, I'm going to pop open another demo just for a sec. The hanging indent demo that I built. Okay. So here's a situation where I've got it working, right? See, it's hanging indent, it's wrapping intelligently as I change it. So if I come back over here, I'm going to duplicate this because I want to show the problem. And this actually tripped me up a couple times before I built a demo and figured it out and took some notes. Okay, so now now I'm in a copy, right? So I've selected it and I come over here and maybe in this case, I've got a tab position of 15, right? And then I'm like, okay, I saw what Kevin did there. He had where the left was negative 15. That's like negative 15. Why are you not letting me do that? All right. Oh, okay. So there we go. And then now let's jump out. Poof, it vanished. I was like, what? I saw that it worked. Why is it not working? So it turns out you have to make, oh, I'm sorry. The negative goes here. Okay, the negative goes here, but still it wouldn't stay, right? The first line's supposed to be hanging out in negative space. Turns out you have to do the positive one first. Then you can come back and do the negative. Okay, so now it's going to work. See? So just if you ever need to do a hanging indent, be aware of that you have to declare the positive space before you go back and carve out the negative. Then I guess the other thing I'll say about this is it could just as easily have been a layout calc. I didn't have to use a field at all, right? So I took the same definition and I took the definition of that field and I just put the bracket option F, right? Or I guess another way to put it is I could control click and say edit layout calculation, right? And so if we get that in there and I turn off the hide object, Let me come over here. Okay. There it is. So could have just as easily been one instead of the other, but there it is. Then one other thing you do if when you're playing with games with your XML is probably want to work on a backup, right? And then if something seriously goes wrong, let's see. Yeah, demo 3 is the one I just pasted. So one of the things I did was I made sure, let's go back to the first one. I put every day of the year in and made sure they all looked good in the transformed version. So if there were going to be so it was funny because when I first did it, like one was wrong, one stayed blue. I tried there was something very slightly different about one of those. That was the other day while I was preparing the demo. This is probably a good time to pause and ask if there's questions or comments. Hey, crickets chirping.
Like a lot of jaws dropping.
There's an
Say
awesome
again?
calendar.
Yeah, somebody should lobby Ernest to make that available again because I don't think it can be purchased now. I love it. It's one calculation, and the guy did it, using the tool set we had available to us about 15 years ago. It's just amazing. I learned a lot just getting it to do what I want, and I'm scratching the surface of what it can do.
That could be a date picker.
Oh, it could be all kinds of things. And I think he shipped it with a pretty good demo too. Okay.
So how did you find out about the FM clipboard tool from Codance?
Well, I do work with them.
Okay.
But I asked if I had permission to share it when it's not yet available, and they said yes, it's going to be available very soon. Ivan's working on blog articles right now. So
Okay.
yeah, and there's other tools out there, right? He's leveraging the Base Elements plugin. It's certainly not the only one. What I liked about his was he took all the friction out of it. I didn't have to learn anything to use it. I could just start using it to solve the problem I cared about. So I was particularly drawn to it. Plus, he's a very smart and very nice man also, so it's a pleasure to work with him. Yeah, so okay, disappearing data. This is a little over 10 years ago, another developer hired me and said, "Can you help me solve a problem?" I said, "Sure, pay me up front in cash and we're good to go." What the problem was he had data kind of randomly disappearing from his system. And the question was why? So he had a housekeeping script, and that script would make sure there was only one user, and then he had a scratch table he was doing stuff with. He wasn't using virtual lists, so he did a lot with temporary tables. And they would go over to the scratch layout, and it would do a show all, delete all. We didn't have truncate table back then. And but the weird thing was things were disappearing from multiple different tables at odd times. And he was, really scratching his head. And I said, "Well, do you have some relationship with the deletion dependency? And you don't realize it?" No, it wasn't that. So what it came down to was the layout. Oh, it would help if I showed layouts. Okay. The layout had gotten deleted. Oh, nobody could possibly be using that. Let's take it out. So then what happened was the housekeeping routine would run. Okay, only one user. It would go here or wherever they happen to be at the moment this was invoked. It would throw an error, but notice error capture is not on. It wouldn't display an error. So then it did the show all on the current table and deleted all the records. He didn't have a restore order script, which, by the way, is only working because I have a backup table called order backup, and it's just restored from there. So then the question was, well, what could we do about this? So better housekeeping. Hey, that'd be a great name for a magazine. Well, we could see if there's an error when we go to the layout and only do the deletion if there's an error, right? So that's one thing we could do. Another thing we could do is we could check the layout ID. Okay, FileMaker doesn't give us direct access to this, but it's easy to build a custom function to do this. And if we have time, I'll show how to do that and how easy that is. And then in the modern era, we might do this. And I just sort of set this up with the wrong way and the right way. Okay, I want to point out if you've got a truncate table and you're saying current table, you are living dangerously. So the right way to do it is to specify what table you want to delete. Another thing I'll say about that is this is one of those rare times that FileMaker actually will point at a table and not a table occurrence. So just be aware of that. Let me check my notes because I think there's one or two other things that are worth saying about that demo. Then again, maybe not. Let's see. All right. Yeah, if you're using truncate table, I'll just point out you have to grant full access privileges. Okay, if your script has that, you have to grant full access privileges to use truncate table. Otherwise, it won't happen. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Oh yeah, this was kind of fun. So have you ever had a challenge where you had fields of different sizes and you wanted to make them all the same? Okay. Some of you are going to know this already. I only learned this fairly recently from a Codance employee named Ian Himmel. So thank you, Ian Himmel, for educating me about this, right? So if we come over to our inspector here, right? At first, it's showing you the overall dimensions of what you've selected, but I want to make this 120 wide and 60 points high. So if I come in here and I type the 120 and I type the 60, I can do that. That didn't used to be the case, and I'm not sure in what version that changed, but that was a very welcome thing to learn was possible.
It's also worth noting that from a UI affordance, those things are dimmed, so it doesn't even invite the user to say you can edit them.
Right.
Which is really odd.
Yeah, on the other hand, I think one of the things it's saying is the 60s open is not dimmed out because they all are 60.
Right. But yeah. So, I mean, the right way to do this would be just to not indicate a number because all of them are different numbers. And I think the way that Mac OS does it in some places, they just put a dash to say,
you know what?
well,
I like it. I like knowing what the total width is here.
Yeah, well, that's the total width. Yeah, I understand. But what I'm saying is,
you could have both. Right?
Yeah.
You could have the overall and the specific.
Mm-hmm.
You could have both, right? You could have another set of size entries, one for overall and one for the specifics, something like that. Yeah, I agree. It is confusing, and but it was one of the things that happens when you're an old developer is you tested something 15, 20 years ago. And then you decide that's how it works. And then sometimes you find out later. I'll give you a good example of that. Let me see if I have this handy. This was, let's see if I can go off script here and find it. I could just say it, but I have a screenshot that shows it. So I was hoping to show you the screenshot instead. No, I'm not seeing it. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. So on the Macintosh Forever, you've been able to hide text inside a window title by putting a hard return. So making a multi-line title where only the first row would be visible and this like this. And the second row would still be there, right? The true title of the window would be all of this with the embedded return. So what happened in Windows was it didn't work. You would just see it, you would get this. So I was assuming up until very recently that was still the case. But finally somebody called me on and said, I don't think that's true anymore. And I checked, and sure enough, and then I went back and figured out which version it was. So starting in FileMaker 16, Windows now supports this also. Got some other stuff to talk about here. I don't think any of this is terribly interesting. I'm going to move on to the next one. Yeah. Oh, this is kind of cool though. Okay. So normally, right, you have a button, and one of the reasons people have been using single segment button bars instead of regular buttons was because they wanted to be able to dynamically calculate the label, right? Well, it turns out now we can do that. And the way we can do that is by putting a layout calc syntax in there. So if you put layout calc syntax, really it's not any different than if you took the text tool, right? Am I going to get that? Yeah. And then clicked inside there, right? And embedded it. But it wouldn't have occurred to me to paste it in there like that. And somebody pointed that out. So there it is. Yeah. So you can do that. There's something else going on with that's pretty cool about layout calcs in particular. And here's what it is. Well, first thing I'll say is merge variables. Merge variables allow repetitions. There's nothing wrong with, or sorry, regular variables allow repetitions, but merge variables do not support repetitions. So here's what I mean by that. If I run this, I'm going to just put a debugger on for a sec. I'm going to run this script, right? And this is saying, okay, here's a variable without a rep, and I'm going to set it. And then I'm going to set a variable with a rep. Okay. I'm going to run that. And did I run it? Let's do that. Make sure we ran it. Okay. So yeah, I had to refresh. So what's happened is if we look in the data viewer on the current tab, you can see they're both populated. But here on the layout, we're only seeing, because, and this is not a bug, this is documented. Merge variables do not support reps. However, it's really easy to turn a merge variable into a layout calc, especially if you're on a Mac. Just put an italic F colon in the front of that, like that. So I held down Option and I pressed, so Option F, and then I put a colon. So now that is no longer a merge variable. That is now a layout calc. And if you do that, then you can have your repetition in your merge variable on your layout. If you're on Windows, you can make the italic F holding down the Alt key and then typing 0131 on the number pad. Has to be on the number pad. And then let go of Alt. So it's Alt 0131 and then let go of Alt. And then you'll get the same, the italic F. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say about that. No, I think we'll move on. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna yeah, move on to the next one.
Kevin, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is it still true, if I'm right, that layout calcs don't get refreshed if you get references to like fields or tables and then you change the schema?
Oh, I'm not sure that's true. The thing to watch out for with layout calcs is we got a new capability like pretty soon after they were released, and the new capability is a double-edged sword. Let me pop it back open for a sec, okay? Okay. So the new capability that we got was that if you reference data in a layout calc, so I'll just put one on the screen, okay? Let's just jump in here. Okay, so if I come in here, so there's nothing to stop you from just doing them manually if you want. Okay. And then that'll need to be on there. So okay, so what am I going to do in there, right? Well, yeah, I'm trying to remember if I have what table am I on? I'm on a table called globals. It has lots of fields, so let's call it icon let's do that. Okay, hang on. There it is. I'm just going to grab that. Okay. This might be a little squirrely because this is a global table, but in the old days we had to fully qualify them if we wanted them to work. So let's see, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Let's do it the real way, right? Insert layout calculation. Oh, that's what I did. Okay. in the old days, you had to qualify that, right? Oh, my table occurrence was wrong. There we go. Oops, and then you had to fully qualify it in the old days. Like that, you had to put the table also. Now you don't need to do that, but the problem is they're more responsive when you do include the full qualification. So even though you don't have to, and even though it doesn't do it by default, sometimes if you want it to update in a more timely manner when your actual data changes. But maybe more to your point, the question was if I were to rename, right? Okay, so I was on a table occurrence, and that table occurrence was called _G, right? And there it is. There it is. Oops. And if I were to rename that and call that globals instead, I think it's going to update just fine. Yeah. Oh, another thing about the layout calcs is we're no longer in that position where we have to make the whole thing visible and then shrink the internal text. We can now close the bounding box, right? Now, it won't auto grow if there's a lot of data to show, so you have to make it big enough to show the data, but you can make it small enough to cover the field name if that's appropriate, including like that. That's perfectly fine. That would still demonstrate. That would still display.
I guess I had heard when that first came out that wasn't true. In the very first release of layout calcs, that it wouldn't update with the schema. It was like kept hard coded.
I don't know.
But I could be wrong.
Let's move on. All right. So this is one that a lot of you know, but if you don't know it, you're going to appreciate it. Okay. How many times have you had you copy some text off the web, and then you go and paste it. You're like, oh, I don't want that in my FileMaker, right? So I don't want that in my FileMaker field. So then it turns out when you paste, it gets pasted twice. The first paste is the data and the second is the styling. So that means you can do Command Z for undo if you've just pasted, and it'll take the styling off. It'll undo it back to the first of the two pastes and just give you the data. That's true for pasting. That's not true if you drag and drop, right? So if I do that, I'm out of luck. Yeah, Command Z is not working there. But
I think you can, I forget the Command Control keys. I think you can hold Command Option Shift Paste when you paste, and I think it'll just remove it.
Okay, so let's try that. All right, so I'm going to copy that. Command Option Shift V.
Yeah.
You're right. Nice. Thank you. That's a great tip. Yeah. Of course, we could probably use a custom function, right? And say text format remove.
Yeah.
Right. So I tend to scrub a lot of my stuff because I don't trust people not to do stuff like this. So I tend to have auto enter calcs on my fields to prevent that kind of stuff from happening. Oh yeah, this is a really good one. If you've run into this problem, how many times has this happened to you, right? You in the middle of writing something in the data viewer, right? You're gonna create a magnum opus here in your data viewer, right? And then phone rings or you got to look something up. You're like, oh, well, this isn't going to parse. I can't save this the way it is right now, right? I know what? I'll just comment it out and come back to it. Some of you know where this is going already, don't you? Right? So you do this. Okay, that's fine. Great. You click it. Okay, I'm done with my thing. Kind of come back and finish this. And then, right? So two things about this. First off, we never want automatically evaluate turned on, right? So I try to never leave it on unless I'm doing some kind of weird experiment where it's actually useful. But so let's leave this off for a sec. Delete that. Now I can just take this and drag and drop. Whoops. Try again. Select. What am I doing wrong? All right. Well, I can copy and paste it. Yeah. Okay. So I can copy and paste it back. So that's one thing. But another thing we could do is when we first commented out, just put a 1 in front of it. I got this from Jeff Gerard, right? And then just put the 1 in front of it, and then you will not have that ugly problem. So I still had to comment it out, but the point is putting the 1 in front of it. So yeah, that's saved me from pulling out some of my remaining hair.
So why does it do that?
Okay, that's been worth the whole hour right there.
Thank you.
I hate
Yeah.
that thing.
All right, here we go. So let's see. Yeah, so resurrect it from the result or prepend to 1. Let's see what else we got going on.
But why 1 and not 0, by the way?
Because I like to accentuate the positive.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So I said we might take a look at this, right? So FileMaker doesn't have a get layout ID, right? But it's really easy to make your own. So what you do is you start with the function we do have, which is layout IDs, right? And why am I seeing these layout IDs? It's because I've got these layouts. Now I'm using Monkey Bread, so it's going to tell me here. But there are a lot of good reasons to work with to have custom functions to deal with IDs, even if you do use Monkey Bread. So there it is. That's telling me this, right? And I'll point out I've got a bunch of copies, and I put my sandbox at the bottom, right? So, and there's 6 of them. So if I take my get layout number, I would expect to see 6. Let's see if that's what we get. Yes, right? If I move that layout somewhere else, 1, 2, 3, right? Whoops. So then if I refresh now, I would expect to see a 3, and I do. Okay, so get layout number is doing exactly what we would expect, right? It's telling us the position of the layout in the total set of layouts. Layout IDs, interestingly enough, well, let's go to the next one. Yeah. Okay. So what I can do here is I can say, look at that list of layout IDs and grab me the value out of that list of layout IDs that corresponds to the current layout number. And so the reason that works is layout IDs reflects the order of the layouts also. So we are on layout 139. If I were to move this back down to the 6th position in the layout stack, this 139 would be down here at the bottom. Let's prove that. Okay. See? So that's why this works. And then you can just make a simple custom function to do that for you, right? And then you can always figure out what your layout ID is. Now, why might you want to do that? There's actually lots of reasons, right? And one of them is you might want to do some kind of editing or navigation by ID, right? So you might have another custom function that says, I'm going to take that layout ID and turn it back to a number at runtime. Because when we go to layout, we can't go to layout by ID. We go to layout by number. So what we can do is feed the custom function the ID, and then it will be translated to the number at runtime to get you where you intended to go. Yeah, so sometimes I have it sitting in JSON, other times I just pass it as a parameter. And another thing you might do with layout ID is do some validation. So in this case, we don't care about this parameter up here, but what we can do is I can say, give me the current layout ID, and now here's a list of all the layouts that are permitted to do this. Right? So then over here, I'm saying, if it's not in the list, that's a custom function. If it's not in the list, bail out, right? Why would I do that? Why would I make a custom function for that? Because it's less, I do it all the time. So I'd rather not have to type that is empty filter values, when I can just write the custom function. I have another one, of course, if is in list. I use them both. So a couple other little possible time savers. When you make a $sign variable, a script variable, you don't have to type the $sign. Just put it in here, and as soon as you tab out of the field, it'll put it in for you. Another thing is, if you're old school or you'd, for whatever reason, prefer to type commas instead of semicolons as separators, go ahead, because as soon as you save it, it's going to convert them for you. So you can still use commas if you like to. Okay, so here I've got a problem statement, and the problem statement, the problem is right? I've got this big table. Let's take a look at it. Okay. You know what? I'm not done with that sandbox yet. Sorry, we'll come back to that in a sec. Go away, problem statement. We're still playing in the sandbox. All right. Oh yeah, this was a fun one. Okay, so I've got the length of my. I guess I just gave away the answer. Here, let me scroll that off. You didn't see that. You still didn't see it. Okay, there we go. I forgot that if I no. Okay. Never mind. So have you ever run into this? You've got a text field and you go to push a value in, and then you wished that you could put 1,000 separators in there, and maybe you don't have access to the custom function and you don't really want to write the routine to do it or even go out and let the AI write it for you because, it's just, I don't have time for that, right? So it turns out there's a simple FileMaker function that we can use to give us the 1,000 separators as commas. And this is what it is. It's num to j text. So num to j text 10. If you do that, it will put the commas in for you, as many as it needs to. See that? So, and again, you might be saying, well, why don't you just format the thing as a number? Because this is a text field. I'm going to insert that as part of some larger block of text. That's why. So sometimes we want to format text as numbers. So that's what that is. I should put
What is J?
It's a Japanese function. You
Oh,
can read about it in the help, of course. All right.
And does that work with European? Like if it's it's a space for the European system format?
I do not know.
Okay.
So I apologize for my provincialism. I have never taken the time to test that. Okay, this is interesting. If we work with JSON at all, we've probably run into situations where numbers are being encoded as text. There's good reasons for doing it, there's bad reasons for doing it, but I did want to point out that what I have happening here, in the sandbox, let me back up and say something. We have an input, we have a query, we have a note, and we have the output. All right, so my input is I simply have a JSON object with an N2 and a T2, N for number, T for text. And one's got a number 2 and the other's got a text string 2. And up here, I'm going to say, give me both of them in a list. And they both come back looking like 2s, right? So now I'm doing the same thing, same input, but I'm just saying, if the number 2 is greater than 10, tell me that. Tell me N2 is greater than 10. Otherwise, tell me N2 is less than 10. If the T2 is greater than 10, do the same thing. Tell me T2 is greater. Otherwise, tell me it's less than 10. And let's run it. Okay. So how can 2 be greater than 10? Because in text space, it is, right? It's being evaluated as text, not as a number. So it's just something to be aware of. You can always play it safe. If you're not sure that what you grabbed was a number, you can wrap it and get his number, right? So it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to show all of this because we're already at an hour. So, but what I will say is this, okay? The task was, you know what? I am going to show it all. All right. So the idea was we've got these colors. Produce an arbitrarily long list. I'm using the venerable 6 fried rice, which Beverly I learned about from you many years ago. I'm using this to produce this random string of these colors.
And I ripped it off from somebody else.
Well, they blogged about it in 2007, 19 years ago. Let's look at the definition actually. Manage, and this is the article's still available on the Wayback Machine. It's no longer available here, but if you put that into to archive.org, you can get it. But this is what they did. They just said, hey, make the random number. If it doesn't belong, keep trying. That's what they did. So yeah. So okay. So now I've got this thing, right? If I refresh, it's going to be different each time because I'm randomizing it. All right. But so now here, I purposely set up this test string to make a point, right? A lot of people might say, okay, so let's talk about what the challenge is. Find the last instance of blue and change it to aqua. Okay, leave the other ones blue, but change the last one to aqua. And some people might try this, right? But it's the wrong way to go about it. And the reason it's the wrong way to go about it is it doesn't work under a very specific circumstance. It doesn't work when there are consecutive instances of the same search term. So there's actually 9, not 6. Okay, but I've got a couple consecutive ones in there. And the reason this doesn't work, you might say, well, wait a minute, I did everything right. I put a leading paragraph before, I put a so this ought to guarantee that I'm isolating blues. Does anyone know why it won't work? Why this is wrong? Because if you count these, you will see there's 9. Okay. Does anyone know why it doesn't work? The reason it doesn't work is you can't double count them. So once pattern count has counted that, it sees the next one as just blue, not return blue return, and it doesn't count it. Okay. You don't get to double use that, right? It's like double dipping or trying to double spend the same money. So that's why that doesn't work. So a better way to go about it is use filter values, right? Filter values was designed for that exact usage, right? So then get the position on the last one. That's pretty straightforward, right? I've got the value count. So give me the position that corresponds to 9, right? And it comes back and says, okay, that's at position 123. Great. So the only thing is, oh, and this works, right? If I do this, right, there's the final blue. Let's see where it is. It's right there. Yeah, and it's been changed to aqua. Okay, so it turns out that we can do it without counting the matching entries. We can actually just do it like this. And the reason is position, if you give it a big number here, larger than the length or the length of the string, and then put -1, it counts from right to left instead of left to right. So here, right, the arguments are text, search string, that's straightforward. Start and occurrence, right? Well, to start, if you're going to go negative, you got to start off to the right beyond it, right? Or at the length, right? I could have put length, right? I could have put length input, but why bother? Just type in an impossibly large number. Then you put -1 as the occurrence. And it says, okay, I'll start from right to left. So does it work? Yes. Okay. And so this is kind of interesting. So I knew in the back of my mind that there was this was before I had written this demo, or I started thinking about it. And I was like, I think I might be able to go backwards on, which function was that goes backwards, allows right to left? So I asked various AIs, okay, and I asked, this is kind of interesting. I asked ChatGPT, and it gave me a bunch of BS. It did say position, but it put the negative number in the wrong argument. All right, this is what actually works. Right, and so it sort of got it right, but it still gave me bad information. That was back in October. When I asked it again today, it actually did a worse job, because here it said functions that do not support negative arguments. Okay, so that's ChatGPT as of today. What about Claude? No clue, right? And all of this is wrong. Oh, middle bytes. Did you guys know there was a middle bytes function in FileMaker? Yeah. So I've been using Agnes Riley's FM Dojo, and it actually did a pretty good job. It didn't get it perfect, but it did much better than the others. So if come on, I guess I got to put that there. right? So I came along here and I asked the question and I saw that it was a lot closer, but it wanted that number to be 1 instead of 9999. So I told it wasn't correct. Then it kind of argued with me. Then I told it once again it was wrong and said your 2 sanity tests do not return the same thing. And then it said you're correct. And my earlier statement was wrong. So then it got it right. So, but what was kind of cool about it is position is the primary function. Well, it's the only function where you can give it a negative argument. So, anyway, I was impressed, and I haven't had enough time to really explore in here, so we're not going to say a whole lot about it. But this is a AI engine that understands FileMaker and has been trained on FileMaker, and sometimes I just go in and ask it questions, or oh, this was fun. I fed it. I had a screenshot of some code, and I wanted to turn it into editable text, so I just said, "Please convert this for me," and it did. And then you just click that, and then you've got your text. So sometimes you get in that situation. It's like, oh man, I took a screenshot, but I wish I would have saved the code somewhere. It did a great job. So that's what I have to say about that. Let's see. Let's see. I got a couple more in here. Oh, this is kind of fun. Produce a list of month abbreviations, right? Well, I could write that. I could ask AI to write it for me. It's probably pretty straightforward. But did you guys know about get system locale elements? There's also get file locale elements. And these will give you all kinds of interesting information, which sometimes if you need it at your fingertips, you can just reach in and grab it out of the JSON. And so in this case, figure out where to get it from, get it. So there's my list of month abbreviations. And then kind of to the point you were asking at a little while ago, Vince, one of the things is it means that you can get it for whatever country you happen to be operating in, right? So here, this example comes off the Claris help entry, and I'm using get file locale elements to produce this, or I took their example. But then, so that's the equivalent of what we saw here. But so that way you can say, whatever country I'm in, give me the abbreviations. They can't use 3-digit abbreviations in French because June and July start with the same 3 letters. It's interesting too that they put periods on theirs and we don't put periods on ours. I guess that's the way they do things there. Oh, and here's the final one, right? You ever wonder, like, is my local file, there's many ways to solve this, but is my local file using MDY or DMY for the dates, right? Well, it's here in get system locale elements. Just grab that value and then you'll know. So that was a miscellaneous sandbox.
Oh, but that was system locale, not file locale, right?
Yeah, but it would probably work on either, right? Unless you were really cared. I guess the question is, do I care more about the settings in this particular file? Or do I care more about the settings in the country I'm running in, regardless of which file I happen to have open?
Yeah.
So either would be valid, depending on what problem you were trying to solve. Okay, faux sub-summaries problem statement. Well, and here's faux sub-summaries. Okay, so here we've got 119 vendors and a bunch of products tied to those vendors. And we want the good old problem with a standard FileMaker summary report is you've got your break field, but if the data crosses a page, it doesn't know, right? So the challenge here but virtual list to the rescue is I know how many rows I can fit on a page, and I've got the same row height for the supposed sub-summary as I do for the data. So that means I could just use simple math and decide if I need to put a fake entry up here. So what does the fake entry look like? Okay, it looks like this. So here we are on page 1. There we go. You can see them here, right? So rather than just having stuff start off with no explanation of what I'm looking at or having to go back to the previous page, I just bring that forward, right? Tools, data viewer. We've got current Yeah, there it is. So as necessary, I make an entry like that and have that, and then my virtual list is just rendering these rows. So that's all background. That's just so I can actually now show something cool. What's cool is this. In my orders, or in my products, I should say. Yeah. In my products, get off my screen. Let's try that again. In my products, I am not storing the vendor name. I've got the vendor's ID, right? Why should I, right? It's right over here, related, right? I can see the vendor name relationally from whatever product I'm on. So here in layout mode, right? Just as you would expect, I'm on a product, but I'm looking at the related vendor name. So when I go to produce this, I'm running method A, and method A is taking 4 seconds. And if we look at the sort logic, it's sorted on the related data, and then it's sorted on the product, right? Just what you'd expect to produce this. The only problem is related data sorts are slow. So here's method B, much faster, same output, 109 pages either way, by the way, right? Did the same amount of work, but did it considerably faster. And the reason is, and yet what am I sorting on, right? Not that. Hold on. Let's go in with the debugger. Okay, so wait a minute. What are you sorting on, Kevin? Method B is the fast method, right? Okay, let's find out. Hang on a sec. Something strange going on here. Oh, I'm confusing this with another demo I was going to show you. It's not a question of how I'm sorting it. It's a question of how I'm building the array. Sorry, I have a very similar demo that's going to show the other thing. So here's what's happening. In method A, to build that array, I'm using JSON get element or JSON set element to build each array row, but I'm building the array in a sort of roll your own JSON manner in this script. So now that we've gotten clear on that, okay, I'm using insert calculated result, which is a trick I picked up at .fmp about 8 years ago from Mr. Watson, right? So in the one case, I was saying JSON set element and adding each row to the array. In the other case, I'm using insert calculated result. And the interesting thing about insert calculated result is it doesn't rewrite the variable. You can have it append to the variable, right? Because I'm not selecting the entire contents. So if you just leave it like that, okay, it says, I'm just going to pop this onto the end of the existing variable. And that remember, this variable is getting larger with every iteration. So this ability to just tack stuff onto the end of it instead of having to rewrite the whole thing obviously, if you're dealing with small amounts of data, it doesn't really matter. But if you're dealing with large amounts of data, it can be a huge time saver. So again, method A takes about 4 seconds. Okay. See, 109, same exact output. Method B, 0 or 1 second. So yeah, so the general rule would be if I'm building a list and that list is going to get somewhat large, it might be worth it. And I'm using a script, it might be worth it to use insert calculated result instead of now I think that instead of the list function, right? That's probably what I was using in that other version. So let's find out, right? No, I'm using JSON set element and pushing it in that way. Okay. Same would be true though if you were building it using the list function where you're saying list append to the next, list append to the next. Insert calculated result is faster than list. So I don't think there's anything else. Oh, here's a little tip. This might be a good time actually to talk about some just some generic little tips. So everyone knows you can right click in the field, right? And say find matching values or constrain the found set. All right. Let's do it differently. Okay. So say I right click in here, find matching records. It's going to find everything with Green and Associates, right? Okay. But did you know I could instead, so let's find them again. Well, it doesn't really matter. Okay. What if I want any associates? If I just highlight that word and right click and say find matching, it'll search on anything with associates. So that ability to constrain or extend, right, works on the selection. I used to think it just worked on the whole field. I blundered into that by mistake one day.
I think Tony had all kinds of suggestions for Claris to do other things with that contextual menu. And I don't know if Tony's here.
You saved me some typing, but I'll
Oh,
type it
there you
in
go.
anyhow.
All right.
Constrain omit would be cool.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many things that would be nice to have at the on the fly as opposed to needing a script to pull them off. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's I've got some other ones to show here too that are kind of useful. Let me just sorry, I'm just thinking about one other thing. The let me reopen that JSON virtual list reporting. Let's go back here for a sec. So here's a fun one. You're going to search on a date range, right? I think probably a lot of us know this already, but instead of typing a slash or a hyphen, we can use a dot. So we probably sometimes faster. Also for a range, we don't need 3. We can just do 2. So that's a perfectly legitimate date search, right? What's funny is when I bring it back with Command R, right? Then it says, well, here's what I did with what you typed, Kevin. So let's talk about some other ones. Yeah. Oh, here's an interesting one. This only works on Windows. Sorry, this only works on the Mac. It doesn't work on Windows. If everyone knows you can do Command Tab to go through your open applications, right? And that works the same on Windows or very similar. But what they may not know, first off, while I'm holding down Command, if I hit Escape, I can get rid of that. So if I change my mind, I don't have to jump somewhere else and then come back. I might point out too, if I hold down the Shift key, I'll go the other direction. So if I overshoot something, whoops, I went too far. I wanted Safari. Hold down Shift and Tab, and it goes backward. Okay. But I'll hit Escape, and that all goes away. But you can also do Command Backtick. Backtick is the key directly above Tab. And when you do Backtick, it cycles you through the open windows that you have in the current app. Isn't that nice? So maybe a lot of you are old school Mac users. You're like, well, duh, everyone knows that. But a lot of us don't. So that's why I mention it. What else? Okay, in the scripts.
There's another Finder thing that I discovered a while back, and that is if ever let's say you're in Slack, you're typing a message and you want to attach a file.
Yeah.
You have the little plus icon, and then you have to navigate to the Finder to go choose the window, the file that you want to get. But let's say your file is on the desktop, but you want to navigate back to the app. You can start dragging the file, Command Tab over to the app, and the drag is holding on to the file as you Command Tab cycle through different apps, and then let go into the location that you want to drop it. That's pretty. It's pretty incredible if you think about, like, wow, someone had to think about the fact that there's 2 operations going on at the same time. You're still holding on to the file. You're Command tabbing across different apps, and then once you located your app, you're still holding on to the file and you drop it. It's really amazing.
when you're dropping, where are you dropping into this? Wait a sec, into this
But
thing?
whatever container can receive a drop,
Mm-hmm.
a file drop.
Yep.
So, like it could be Keynote, it could be you're in the middle of a Slack message, it could be messages. It doesn't matter what it is. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever will receive a file. But again, it gives you so much flexibility. And apart from that, even more mind blowing is if you use a Mac and you have another Mac beside you and you only have one keyboard, you could do what is that called? What is that called when you move your mouse into the other screen? I forget continuity. Like
Yes,
you,
continuity. Yeah.
yeah, it's. I mean, it's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Maybe if you put your
continuity.
iPad over there, you can use a mouse on your iPad.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, so some other tips, right? Everyone knows you close a window with Command W or a tab on your in your scripts. I still call it Script Maker, but it's now called Script Workspace, right? Everyone knows you can do a Command W to close it, or you can click the X, right? Did you know that if you want to keep one and close all the others, it's Option click the X. So I just held down the Option and clicked that, and it closed all the others. Another one is, say I'm here, and then I'm like, oh, wait, what's going on here? I'm calling a script. What's that script, right? If I Command click on that script name, it'll open it in a new tab and take me right there. See that? So I was here, I Command click there, and it opens that up in a new tab. All right, here's one for you. Let's say you've got a parent script and a child script, and you want to make a copy of them. Is there any difference between pressing Command D and duplicating both versus Command C and then pasting?
Yes.
Is that who's speaking?
This is Sean.
Hi, Sean. Hey,
I
Sean,
learned
I
this
want
one
to
recently. It might have been from you.
say, Sean, you know what? I want to say you make some of the nicest comments on my blog, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, love your blog.
Thank you. Okay, what's the difference, Sean?
Duplicating will keep the references between the two, whereas copying and pasting will reference the original script instead of the duplicate copy.
I think that might be backwards.
Okay,
Let's find
one of
out.
those.
Okay, so I just did a copy, and now I'm going to paste, right? And so what we mean by that is the parent script now going to point at locate and parse report data 2, or is it going to point at the original? So I think it's going to be when we paste that it points at, yeah, it points when we copy paste, it's smart enough to give you the reference to the newly copied version. Whereas if we do this and we press Command D, right? Here's the copy, but the child that it's going to call is the original. It's calling this one, not this one.
Yeah, I knew there was a difference. I just had them backwards.
There you go. I wouldn't have gotten that right either, because it just common sense thinks that duplicate should be more elegant than copy paste. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
And I don't know why, but for some reason I find sometimes copying and pasting script steps takes a little while, but duplicating is always instant.
Maybe that's because it doesn't have to update references.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's just on like a single step. It doesn't make any sense why copy paste hangs up for a second or two, but yeah.
All right. So here's one, right? If you let's say you want to go to record 1000, right? Did you know you can hit escape and put the focus up there and then type it and hit enter and go there? So if you're not in a field, hitting escape, right? Hang on. Oh, except when it doesn't work. Let's see. Yeah, once in a while it doesn't work, but like I know I don't expect it to work if I'm in a field, right? But if I'm not in a field, so I'll hit enter here. Now I'm not in a field. I'll hit escape. I'm up there. right? And say, here's a related one, right? All right, let's see. So if I want to go to the first record, right, I just hit escape a couple times, hit the one, there I am, right? Let's say, all right, so I got a lot of records here. Let's say I want to keep the first 1,000 and get rid of everything else, right? Well, obviously one thing I could do is omit multiple, right? That's Command-Shift-T, right? So I could omit 1,000, right? And then click the pi, and now I'm in that found set of 1,000, right? Could definitely do that. Let's show all. But another thing I could do is I could go to record 1,000 once I hit escape. Oh, there, now it's misbehaving. Does anyone understand why that is? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, there I am. So I hit escape. Now there I am. And I go to record 1001, hit enter, and now I want to banish everything from this point down. So I do Command-Shift-T, and then I type in an impossibly large number, and then I hit enter 3 times. The first one says I can't do that, but I hit OK. That was my second enter. Now it's given me the correct number. So now when I hit enter the third time, now I'm in that found set of 1,000. So that's just a pattern that I've gotten into a lot of times. I'm like, if I want to get rid of everything below a certain point, I'll basically do that. Go to the next record, type in an do Command-Shift-T, type in an impossibly large number, hit enter 3 times, and Bob's your uncle. So let's see. Yeah, that was the omit multiple trick. Okay, great. Okay, I got rid of all my little quick ones there. Oh yeah, actually, this one's probably worth doing. I'm going to bring up some JSON so I have something kind of lifelike to play with. Let's see if we have the yeah, let's go here. Okay, so I've got this JSON object, right? And I want to put that in a variable, in a $$ variable, right? So I copy it, right? And so obviously I could write a script to do it, right? Except the script doesn't, no, what would it paste into, right? So it's just kind of a problem, right? Because I've already got this with all the quotation marks I want, and I don't want to go through the trouble of having to write a bunch of JSON to do this. I just want to get this into a variable, right? And it turns out this is really easy, right? So, I could write an insert text script, right? And then push it into the variable that way, but I don't need to, right? So I come up here to the data viewer and I say as follows. It's a 2-step process. The first thing I do is I declare the var, right? Okay, my var equals, and I'm just going to put something in there. I don't care what it is because this is step 1. And now I'm going to evaluate it, and now I'm going to hit escape. Now I'm going to go over here to the current. Now I can take it. Remember, that's already sitting in my clipboard. Now if I paste that in, now I've got that in there. So sometimes if you just need to make a var on the fly, you do it with let, just declare a 1 or something basic, then you can paste in whatever you want as long as it's less than 30,000 characters, right? Or less than or equal to 30,000 characters. If it's more than that and you're in 22 or later, use insert text because now it can take up to 250 million characters. It's the only place where we get that luxury, and I know that was done to help facilitate certain AI things. But it's there. If you need it, you can use it, but you have to be in 22 or later. Let's see what else we got. Multi-line window titles. We talked about this. Pseudo indexing. Let's back here. Photo summaries. Fast summaries revisited. This is the demo I thought I was on a moment ago. Okay, so the trick we showed here was using the insert calculated result to build your list way faster. There's a different thing going on over here. Okay, we've got a fast sort and a slow sort. So kind of the same setup. I've got orders and I've got vendors, right? I've got 1,500 vendors over here. I've got 160,000 orders, right? and each of which belongs to one of those vendors, linked just as you would expect, standard parent-child relationship, or in this case, child-parent relationship. And furthermore, if we look at the fields in order, you'll see I've got the ID of the vendor, but I don't have, I haven't pipelined the vendor's name in there. So what we find is we can do a slow sort and a fast sort. And we do the slow sort, and it's sorting on the related vendor name. That's taking a little while to do its thing. Okay, 6.3 seconds. All right, and if we look at the criteria, vendor name. Okay, I'm going to unsort. Turns out there's a much faster way to sort that and still get what we want. Here's the fast sort, less than a second, and we're correctly sorted. Does anyone know what the trick is? I bet Tony does.
I remember Mikhail Idoshen did the first version, and then I imagine you did a better version.
Hypnotism.
Ready? Let's look at the criteria. We're sorting on ID vendor, but yet we're sorted by name, not by vendor ID. But what's this? Custom order based on value list. Vendor ID and name. We sorted on the value list, and it's way faster than sorting across the relationship.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one. Sorry, somebody's talking in the background.
Sorry.
Here we go. So now I think I'm done with that. We're done with that. Let's go to a slightly larger found set for our next trick. Yeah. Oh, why is it revisited? Because when I'm building virtual lists, or grabbing the data. Well, actually, let's show this here in the smaller file first. Okay. When I click this, I'm going to produce, this is not virtual lists, but I got this totally from Mikhail Edishin, more than 15 years ago. This idea of producing a summary report at the time, it was a text field. It could just as easily be a variable, right? Or a global field. It's probably a global field. Anyway, it's like, what the heck is going on, right? Well, it's a creative use of get summary, right, on the fast summary technique. And so this is what's going on here. But I wanted to point out there were some interesting differences. So the reason I say revisited was at first I ran into the problem where I'm like, oh man, if I'm going to do fast summary, but I have to sort on a related field, that's a performance killer. So instead, as an alternative, was to use multi-find. And multi-find is just basically saying, instead of starting with your found set and cruising through everything using get summary, when having to sort, instead of having to sort and then use get summary, I'm instead just going to do a whole bunch of separate finds, and I'll do each find per vendor and give you the answer, right? So they both have their uses. I sort of put this together just to compare them, right? So if we go into the larger version, hang on a sec. Yeah. So we're in the larger version. Here it is, right? And one of the things about it is it can only report on what's there. It can't report on what isn't there with a fast summary. So that's both a blessing and a curse, right? Multi-finds will find things that are there or not because they're going to search on the vendor ID. So if the vendor doesn't have anything, it can still say, okay, I looked at the vendor and they had 0. And that's what I'm showing here, right? So 26 Glacier Cruise and AC Electric didn't have anything, but multi-find was saying over and over again, give me all the sales or all the orders or whatever we call it, all the orders for this particular vendor. And it did it over and over again. Okay. There they are. So where this gets really interesting is they both have their uses, but I'll also point this out, right? Fast summary, when we get up to a record count this large, is taking longer than multi-find, at least locally, right? 7.91 seconds. .2 seconds, right? So these are demos you're going to be able, that are going to be downloadable. So I don't want to get into all the minutia of them, but the thing about the multi-find is it basically says, look, you give me my starting assumption and I'm going to run with it. Fast summary says, hey, whatever you want as your starting point, dude, we'll roll with it. Right. So as an example, like say I want to find companies that have industries in their name. Okay. So I'm just starting from a found set of industries, and maybe even to make it more arbitrary, I'll just omit a few records randomly, right? Okay. So now I started with some industries, but then I took some out, and I'm like, look, trust me, this is what I want to be reporting on. Right. So fast summary unfound set, boom, there it is. Right. So the thing about the fast summaries, right, is it says I'm going to take a found set and I'm going to just roll through it, and whatever I find, I'm going to report on. So I think I both think they both belong in your toolkit, and you can decide which to use. And so it's revisited because once I learned that trick of being able to do the fast sort on the value list, that made fast summaries much more viable. Whereas for a while, I thought I was just going to be using multi-finds a lot for the speed reason. All right, so so many things we could do. This is a trick worth having in your toolkit if you don't already have it. And Sean, you busted, this is more than 10 years ago I wrote about this, and you busted me in the comments and said, oh man, there's a major hole in your thinking. But what I've found is there might technically be, but it's never actually come up in all the years I've used this. So I'm going to share it and let the chips fall where they may. So how many times has this happened to you? You build a beautiful report for your client, right? And then the client says, oh man, I love it. And you worked really hard to make sure it would fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I mean, maybe it had to spill onto multiple pages, but at least you got all the columns, right? So with a decent margin, it still fit. And then they said, what'd be really cool is if I could just have like 3 extra columns. And then you go, oh my God, I'm going to have to go down to 4-point type and okay, sure, I'll do it. Right. So it turns out there's an easier way. And the easier way is that let's look actually at what let me get out of here. Okay. Let's go into layout mode. I'm purposely showing inches here. Everyone knows you can change that by clicking here, right? And that the other place that you can change it is on the inspector easily. Well, there's probably other places too, but 2 other places. On the inspector, you can click here and change it too. Okay. So, but I purposely got it on inches because I want to point out I've got 11 inches of usable space, right? Plus there's margins here, right? So this is I think 8.5 by 12 sheet of paper, right? And setting up the custom paper sizes is very straightforward, especially on the Mac. So, here in the print setup, I choose what I want here, or the page setup as they call it on the Mac, right? And you can set up a lot of these. And where it's interesting is you might think, well, that's only going to work if I'm using that printer, right? Don't these things live in the printer? Sort of. But FileMaker internally stores the metrics and it doesn't care. So once you choose this, behind the scenes, FileMaker does the math and figures out what it needs to do. So once you've referenced a custom paper size, you can no longer need to be connected to the printer where it was defined. Okay. And then the other thing I'll say about that is the sweet spot. If you don't want it to get too distorted, what do I mean by that? You're going to make a PDF. Right? This is about making PDFs. And then when you print it, it will be happy to zoom it back down to 8.5 by 11 within reason. So if you're, the sweet spot is to get the right ratio. And the ratio, if we divide 8.5 by 11, is 0.77, right? So you might want to, if you're doing custom paper sizes, you probably want to be in the ballpark of that if you don't want it to stretch the type too much or look too weird. But that's so, on some of these I didn't really care, or it was close enough, or nobody noticed, or I didn't mind if it smushed it a little bit. But that's just a general guideline is 0.77. And does it work? Yeah, it works great. So what do I mean by that? If I there we are, right? So I go to make this report, and I think report 6 uses something bigger. Well, let's go with 3 because I said I would. Okay, hang on. Report 3. There it is. And I say, see, what do we see when we do page setup? Yeah, see it now, 8.5 by 12, right? And I save it as PDF. Automatically open. Okay, looks great as a PDF. If I print it, which I took the liberty of doing earlier, can you guys see that? I'm not seeing myself. Point is, it prints perfectly. Both Acrobat and Preview out of the box, if you haven't changed their behavior, will auto scale that back down when you go to print. It's been a sanity preserver for me, I can assure you.
Very cool.
Eric, how many more minutes do you think would be, or whoever, do you think would be appropriate?
Oh, I don't know. Probably 9's good.
9 more minutes? Okay.
Yeah. Unless the people here start a riot and make me go longer than
or shorter.
Longer. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about dots and key names for JSON, right? So I think most of us in the FileMaker world, we just try to avoid them. But it's probably good to know the rules and what to do when you do run into them. So I set this up just partly to get it straight in my own head. And at first I thought these things were like SQL. Like if you write SQL statements in FileMaker, and if you don't use a custom function to help you, you may be in the habit of escaping the field names, because there are a number of things where if you don't escape the field names, it won't work. And including if there's a space, or if it starts with an underscore, or if it's a reserved word, of which there are hundreds, or at least dozens, hundreds. I've got them printed out and thumbtacked to my wall, actually, so I can just real quickly check. But I think a general rule a lot of people learned is if you write bare bones SQL, execute SQL statements in FileMaker, the safe bet is escape everything. I don't do that. I only want to escape when I have to. But so at first I thought, okay, just use this, what they call bracket notation around things if you're not sure. And what do I mean by that? I mean, sometimes we get a key, we're reading JSON, and we're like, hey, give me whatever key is at that position, and then give me the corresponding value, right? So at first I was thinking, wrap it in this and play it safe. But there are certain places that can come back to bite you. So really it's best if you kind of know what your JSON looks like before you decide if you're going to use these or not. So, okay, that was my big disclaimer. So here we go. Let me just click refresh and we can see what's happening, right? So I'm declaring, I've got an object and it's got 2 main keys, right? And then the value on each of those keys is another smaller object, okay? And so my first key is with dots and keys. And you can see what I've done to support that, right? And this is well documented. You do a bracket and then a single quote. And that's in addition to the regular quotation marks. I called them out with red here. Down here, it's exactly the same, but I didn't use the bracket and the single quote. And we can see the difference, right? Because normally a dot means effectively a parent-child relationship. Go from name down into a sub-object, which is going to have a key called first. That's what that's doing, right? Okay. So I just wanted to make that distinction. And I'm a huge fan. It's kind of funny. I think of these sandboxes, of which I've made dozens, if not hundreds, over the years, as sort of open secret weapon that I use. It just really helps me get clear on things, and you can always duplicate a record, and it's just a safe place to play. I would hate to not have sandboxes in my life. Okay, now this is exactly the same, but it's just a more streamlined way of writing. So this was just because when I looked at it, I thought, well, that's technically correct, and it makes it clear that you're doing this, but you don't need to do that, right? So this produces exactly the same output, but in a more succinct manner, right? And so the key thing is, because the path, it's implicit in the path that you're making that you're making an object. That's implicit, right? These dots are saying, hey, there's something below this. So I didn't have to say JSON. Notice there's only one JSON set element here. On the previous one, there were three, right? One to make the outer one and one to make each inner one for the objects. But here, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So we got JSON set element, just another way to do it. And this is the kind of stuff you get comfortable with eventually, but at first can seem kind of weird until you get used to it. Then what's this? .NET writing, but I accidentally start the bracket in the opening quotation mark too early. Right? So it's exactly the same as this upper one here, except I put the bracket in the opening quote in a different spot. And then finally, okay, so look at this input, right? This input is the output from the first example, right? Or from the earlier example, 1 and 2. And then, so this is what I'm talking about. You don't just want to apply this willy-nilly. You want to apply this where it makes sense to apply it, which sort of says, I'm going to know the shape of my JSON before I do this, right? Because both of these made sense depending on the structure, right? I couldn't just blanket do one or the other. So in fact, if I tried that, all right, just curious. Yeah, see, it didn't work. It's like, there's nothing down there. What are you talking about? There is no key called name.first. Okay, 3 minutes left. I talked about that generating sample data custom function. I just want to show this. This is so cool. All right, let's delete all records. Okay, so I have no line items, no invoices. I've got customers and I've got products, right? And so, I know a lot of people use an AI to make sample data, but what's cool about this, right, is I've already got this set up. I've got the customers, got the products. I just want to make invoices and line items, right? And so yeah, I did this more than 12 years ago. Okay, so randomly generate, da-da-da-da-da. What am I going to do? Well, rather than type all these in and have to think about it, I've got some examples here. Let's say, okay, so randomly take between 20 and 50 of my customers and generate between 4 and 12 invoices for each of them. Here's the date range I want to see on those invoices. In fact, doesn't matter, right? That's the date range I want them to be in. Here's the number of items to arbitrarily put on them in this range. Make sure the price range matches this and give me a quantity between 1 and 24, right? And I click proceed on your mark, get set, click. That faster than you can say Chat GPT. There they are. So, and that's all thanks to that custom function.
Yeah.
Which custom function?
Oh, the 6 fried rice. Manage custom functions. Random num SFR from the year 2007. I was thinking custom functions that old ought to have some gray hair on them or something. All right. Well, let's see if there's in closing. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say one more thing about JSON. So a big frustration I have is I see quite often people are using JSON raw. I really don't like JSON raw. And I'll give you an example of why. Okay. JSON raw shows up in two places. It shows up in JSON set element and it shows up in JSON make array. This function was introduced in 21 and its job is you hand it a list and it produces an array. Okay. And so I'm wrapping it in this custom function just to make it a little prettier. So here, since I haven't specified, I've told it that the line separator on this list, this is one list that intentionally has an empty row. It has an address down here with I would say New England, but the New Jerseyites wouldn't appreciate that. A zip code that you would more normally find in New England, but also applies to New Jersey. Okay, we've got a number in scientific notation, we've got a 1 + 1, we've got an array, and we've got an object. Okay. And I'm telling JSON make array to use JSON raw to figure it out. I'm also telling a custom function I wrote to figure it out. So we're going to click refresh. And at the first glance, it looks like they both did the same thing. But when you start looking at the minutia, let me see if I have a screenshot that'll bring this out into greater light. How wrong can you be? Okay. So we told JSON make array to figure it out, and got the first two correct. Then 1 + 1, it just called that 1. It didn't see that as a text string. The scientific notation it got correct. 42 it got correct. It took what should have been a null and put quote quote. It took 123 Main Street and saw it as a number. It got the city and state correct. And it knocked the leading 0 off the zip code because it saw that as a number. None of which happened here. So I've already blogged at some length about various JSON custom functions, and this is one of them that I've written about, and that's on the resource page. The only other thing I'll say is it got these two right. But if I were to pollute my data and say, yeah, I know it looks like an object and I know it looks like an array, but now I've polluted it so it isn't really. So my custom function says, well, okay, it's a kind of convoluted text string you've got there, but I'll let you have it. This one just ignored the pollution and saw the array. So I think when you do raw, it's looking at the first character and making a judgment. However, if I do something that blatantly is not an object and blatantly is not an array by putting it inside the braces or the brackets, then raw understands. So it's more than just looking at the first character. So I guess what I would say about JSON raw is there are two kinds of people who've used it. Those who have encountered problems using it and those who will encounter problems using it. And I recommend not using it. The one exception might be is if you know that all your values are either pure numbers, pure arrays, or pure objects. It gets those three correct if you can count on that. So that's a time you might use it. And I think on that note, we're out of time.
That's great. Whirlwind.
Yeah, excellent job.
Well, thanks
Kevin's
for having
stuff
me.
is always good, always good.
Fantastic.
You know what? This is the 25-year anniversary of me first presenting to you guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Thank you, Kevin.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Kevin, one
Oh,
one
yeah.
question I have with all these examples is, have you ever like tested them in conditions like on a LAN, on a WAN, and just to compare like, okay, this performed really well locally. On a LAN, it still performed really well. On a WAN, in these conditions,
Yeah.
it suffers. Just
I
wondering,
haven't been
yeah,
super scientific about it. I know at one point I was doing a fair amount of that, but then the problem is a new version comes out and you have to do it. I never built like the right test suite to automate that. I was trying to think about where I did that. It might be when I first learned about multi-find versus fast summaries. That might be where I did. I was trying to think. There was one article, and this is why I say I like my table of contents, because a lot of times I'm sort of like, well, if I can just remember roughly when I wrote the article. In the early years, I was more prolific. Yeah. So the
I
point
mean,
is,
yeah,
at one point I did it. I did it, and I wrote an article where I showed the different scenarios, but I'm not seeing it at the moment, and I don't want to waste everybody's time. So
that's
if I
fine.
find it, but the point is, if I did, it was a long time ago, and I wouldn't trust it now anyway.
Yeah. I think in general, the reason I ask is just because sometimes with techniques for virtual lists, especially when you're transporting a huge object, you have to transport that object to the client so that the client now can actually work on it in
Mm-hmm.
memory.
Yeah.
And so, just understanding the costs of that, of what's involved there
Well,
is,
let's talk about that for a sec.
is
So the thing I would do there, and I actually do this in client solutions, right? Is I have a transfer table and it has and I put so I get the answer on the server, and I got a giant chunk of JSON, right? Like one lady's like bringing back 70,000 records, of a ledger for checks or something, right? And she wants to see every check she wrote last year, her company, right? And we're in the US, so we actually still write checks. Um, anyway, or check or ACH equivalent. And so I have a transfer table, right? I do the work on the server. Then all I have to send back to the client is the ID, right? Then it goes and finds that record. And that's much more performant. Well, first off, if the data's too big, there's a 1,000,000 character hard limit on PSOS, both the parameter and the result. So and this is strictly a PSOS limit. So if it's over that, you're just not going to get anything back except an error. So in fact, it'll have a weird error message like import failed. Well, I wasn't doing an import, So, yeah, I've got a lot of clients working on WANs, and so I've tried to work hard to do that, but I'm not sure I have anything general to say on that subject. I know you've got a very cool technique with the local file. The times I've looked at it, it hasn't felt like a good fit for the particular projects I've wanted to use it on, but I love the idea that at some point I could use it. Yeah.
okay.
It's nice to see all your faces. Yeah. All right, I'm out of here.
Oh, hey, Kevin, you got time for one question before you go? Pick your brain on something?
Sure.
Okay. Let me just take my hand down. I took a shot at building a calculation tester, which is kind of like the sandbox file that you're using. The difference being, my goal was to be able to kind of put a custom function in and then have like 5 or 6 boxes for parameters. Have you built one of those, or do you know if anyone, or does anyone here know if anyone has like successfully built one that's like bulletproof? Mine was a little rough around the edges. And I hope that question makes sense. You know what I mean?
I think what you're saying is the idea is that you would have a custom function that could take up to 6 arguments.
Yeah, and then you have like individual fields and you put in your arguments, and then you could take a calculation, either FileMaker calculation or a custom function, and you could basically test it. I don't know what the correct term is, but you just, throw different input values on it and see what the result is. And it just rough around the edges?
I have not done that, and I'm trying to think if
If you've seen one,
some
if you've
people
seen
are
one.
really good. Well, Tony, you're the one who's so good at benchmarking everything and coming up with hard facts instead of irresponsible
Well,
assertions.
I get a few things right. There's a bunch of stuff where I'm reaching out, but thanks.
Yeah. You know,
And
I did
yeah,
want to say one thing. When I showed that, that just as a data point, when I showed, gosh, what was it? I built, no, it wasn't that. Okay. I did something a couple weeks ago. I'm sorry, I thought I had it here to show, and then it slipped my mind, and now I can't remember which demo it was. But let me just say this, where the code was taking, oh, I know where it was. Let me just bring it. I'm going to share for just for 1 sec. Okay, so I think it was actually this, right? So I did this this thing on destringifying JSON, right? It's like you've got JSON sitting in a field, but when you tell the data API to grab it, then you bring back this array of objects, but each object is stringified. So rather than it doesn't, in other words, it's not correctly typed as an object. That's the background, right?
mm-hmm.
So at the very end, let me see if this is, yeah. So after I got it as fast as I could, I had intentionally come up with a solution that I could put in the data viewer with the idea that if I can put in the data viewer, that means I can make it into a custom function.
Yep.
So where it got interesting was when I put the same exact code into the custom function, it was slightly faster. Not a lot faster, but consistently a little bit faster, just by virtue of being in a custom function, as opposed to just being run, as a script step.
Yeah, maybe a little bit compiled or something.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what that was. So,
well, let me just say thanks. And I've read more than 50% of your blog posts. It's hard to keep up. I think I went through like every single one for a while. And I'm using the modal popovers is my personal favorite.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Neat. Well, you never know where things are going to land.
People can go looking for that. There's an exercise for the attendees and the listeners.
Yeah, I think that's from the year 2014. And the reason I say that is I think
still good. Evergreen code.
I think I remember visiting my daughter in Salt Lake City when I wrote that. That's why I'm saying that. Okay. Well, I'm going to say goodnight and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye, Kevin.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Folks. Good night.
Very much.
Thank you.
I was going to ask if he remembers what he had for dinner on that night. It's too late now.
all the stuff he does and pushed it out probably.
That was really fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric, for doing this.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, that was great. We connected at Full Access 25, and he expressed his appreciation for having been here like 2 years, a year or two before. And I said, "Oh, really?" I was flattered, and I said, "Well, then we got to get you back." So, yeah.
That was a good show. Hey, Vince, Vince, you said something earlier that hit a topic that I asked a question at the Chicago user group. You were telling the story about the Square Moon person turning off.
Oh, yeah, the indexing.
So here's my question for you or for the audience, for anyone. It came up in the context of storing JSON. So let's say that you're building a system that has an integration, and let's say that the customer says, I want to store the JSON in the record. Like you're doing an integration, you're at MailChimp or whatever, and you're bringing down a block of JSON, then you're parsing it. Now, the JSON would be, you wouldn't really use it other than read it on demand. So the question would be, if I tell that particular field to be unstored, does that then, by virtue of being unindexed, being sort of a very inexpensive field? I guess the answer would be yeah.
What do you define as inexpensive? Is it because the expensive side is just not just the size of it, but the index as well?
Yeah. it came into, there was someone was saying like, okay, I can put the notes field in a separate table, or I could put the JSON in a separate table. And I thought, well, how does that compare with just telling the JSON field to be unstored? And yeah, I guess it would be like you'd save the price of the index, or the whatever the computational size of the index, but you'd still have, I don't know, if it's unstored, like what does that do to the size of the table?
Well, it's unstored. It's going to render whatever it needs to render at runtime.
Just on demand, just when you look at it, but otherwise not.
Right.
Those are just calculation fields, right? There's always a price to pay for an index. Alexi Folger and I have had an ongoing discussion for 20 years about indexing fields, not calculations fields, let's say raw data fields. And I've always been a strong advocate that you determine upon when you're building the system and you're planning it, which fields are going to be indexed and which are not ahead of time. I never, ever, ever leave the automatic checkbox on, because I build large systems and I don't want to see a user on the fly indexing 200,000 records or something, right? So there's a tax because it balloons the data to have the database to have it indexed. But if you need it, you need it, right?
And I guess the other thing would be that if you had JSON that was unformatted and you made an unstored calculation to format it for visual display, what would be, that might be relatively free or not. Anyway, it's not that big a deal, but Vince, I was listening to your story earlier, and it just, we all think about these things.
Tony, I was working for a medical company that had a really strong set of rules. We had 10 developers working on the same system, and they would not allow us to have any unstored calculations in the schema whatsoever. Neither were we allowed to use global fields whatsoever. We had to work around that because unstored calcs, right, in appropriate place would cause delays in the system performance. We had like 350 users on one file, right? So we wouldn't have unstored calcs, but we would do layout calculations or hidden things, and using everything that you can do on the layout before layout calculations, actually. Hidden features and pop-up windows, but we stored nothing. We had no unstored calculations whatsoever, and we were able to make a really fast system by doing that. It takes real diligence.
Oh, and by the way, I hear what you're saying. Two kinds of unstored calcs, and maybe that's sloppy language on my part. It's the unstored calcs that have to be unstored, that cannot be stored, and then unstored calcs. Because I was thinking about, unstored calcs where, like, maybe I want to see the JSON formatted, but rather than do it as a stored calc, just make it unstored because it's for display on demand only.
There's very few places where you have stored calcs. And it's just, we're not talking just about fields. You have unstored calcs all over the layout. Every single one of those calculations are unstored. They're at runtime. Script steps that evaluate calculations, those are all unstored because they evaluate at runtimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good way to think about it, because every time people bring up the topic of unstored calcs, they instantly think of just schema, right? They don't think of like, oh, right, I have, custom functions; those are unstored. I have, all the other places where you have calc, and even in a security is not cached; those are at runtime.
Oh,
but that's a weird thing. If you watch Hansa he gave a presentation, I think, on Richard Carlton Live TV like a month or two ago. I've been overlapping with him, and we've been doing these things together. It's about a month and a half or 2 months ago. He gave a presentation of like, let me show you every single calculation and how many times it's evaluating. He had all the calcs on every single layout object, a tooltip, a hide condition, conditional formatting, etc. Anyway, the security one was so interesting because it's not just like, it's the number of times it gets evaluated. And it's like, well, you'd think that you land on a record and the security calculation evaluates and you're done. But it evaluated like 60 times.
What?
Like, yeah, like you have to go back and listen to it and watch it. And I think the reason for it, maybe someone here might know the reason, is maybe it's just a way for them to continue monitoring the security in case that the security record level access privilege for viewing the record might be changed by some value that got created somewhere else, and so they have to reevaluate the calculation constantly. I don't know, but it was just really revealing to see so many, like, I wouldn't call it inefficiencies, but over pessimistic calculating for whatever reasons they need to do it, and Hansa for a year or two has been collecting uh, signatures or people to vote up his request to make the calculation engine faster. He's gotten enough signatures now, but I don't think Claris is holding up their end of the bargain.
Hey, Vince, let me ask you, do you frequently use record level security?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we do have it.
Using the built-in record level security from FileMaker?
Yep.
Okay.
It does add overhead, but we do use.
I tend to use variable-driven role-based record level stuff than just instantiate the different roles and variables and then control it that way with myself. It seems lighter, but it takes more work. Just trying to get a variance of what other people do,
Yeah. Well,
And John, can I assume that rule about unstored calcs only applied to schema and not you could use that kind of stuff on the layout?
Yeah. That was actually a tactile, by the way. Okay, so right?
Yeah, I was assuming.
Right? Yeah, no, it's in the schema. We are not allowed any unstored calcs, but you got a billion, like Vince's point, you got a billion unstored calcs within the schema and the scripting, but not in the schema, and that because that was just locking up records, and we also had to totally get away from execute SQL unless it was under 200 records per table, because until a certain release somewhere around 18 or something, you could lock the whole system to an execute SQL, so that became a touchy thing too. When you get to large volume users in a single file, man, you got to have a lot of minutia about how you do everything so you don't hit performance.
Would they have against
globals? Do like
globals?
Vince would have, do it transactional or do like a separation model. But if you got it in one file, yeah, you have hazards. Sorry.
They didn't like global fields, John?
Global fields, not global variables.
And they just didn't want to have okay.
Yeah, well, I forget the reason exactly, but there might have been a few, but,
No global fields?
No global variables.
No global variables. Oh, okay.
All local variables.
So I don't remember where I gave a presentation recently, and it was about our import on server techniques that we had for many years. It was before we had the file write script steps. And so we had to figure out a way to put the file in the location that you can see on the server so you can do the import on the server. Then we got file write options and we refactored it for that. And pretty soon we'll be able to refactor it and make it even better. But one thing that's interesting is that global fields, everything except container field, behave as you would expect, which means the global field is in memory, it's local, and so there's no communication with the server. However, a global container field, if you put an image in a global container field, it gets transferred to the server.
Right.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's like not the way I thought global fields were. And so like we had this technique where we put the container, like we let the user drag a file into a global container, and then the script runs to put that global container into a record, and then we commit the record, and then we say, oh, now we can go on the server, find that record and import from there. Let's say an Excel file. And then we realize, like, wait a minute, we're sending the file twice to the server. Once to put it into the global, and then again to create the record and commit the record. Now it's being sent as part of the record payload, whatever. And so inefficient, but some people were surprised when they see that. How come a global sends data to the server? Anyway.
We did something similar where we were sending container data up to S3, but we had a global container for the user to drop it in.
Yeah.
But then our script was writing it to a temp folder on the disk to then upload it. So because the global container acts that way, it was uploading to the server, downloading it back to the computer to write to the disk, and then uploading it to S3. So 2 more trips than it needed.
I think it was Darren Terry about 9 years. I think it was Darren Terry, maybe somebody else. About 9 years ago at DevCon said that in the old days before FileMaker 7, we really had global fields. Well, the fields we have now are not global fields. They're fields with a global attribute. I'm not phrasing it right, but it's a different technology than it used to be. And you can detect it by how you use the get functions. It's a little over my head, but it's like global fields are actually regular fields with a global attribute. They're not really defined in the same way they used to be. Then that engineering's over my head.
Well, the FileMaker server treats container fields very different, not specific globals now. But
that's the overlap. That's the overlap between that shift in technology.
Are treated very differently than regular data because it even sends it on a different port. From my understanding, it's 443 for container data and 5003 for everything else. Is that right? Anyway.
It sounds a little familiar that they're like streaming container data over secure web. I see James Brown has his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to, since you're talking about containers, had an interesting performance issue that required us to move a major database to its own server because it kept taking down all of the web services and then eventually would crash the server. And it turns out that this was an inherited solution, that it used a lot of interactive container fields. And interactive container fields actually use the streaming aspect of the web publishing engine and was competing with the other WebDirect services and other functions there, to the point where we reached a saturation, apparently, with whatever we had set up. We haven't quite got to the bottom of it. But since we put it on its own server without making any other changes, it's behaved itself. But when we put it with other databases that made a fairly heavy use of WebDirect, it would run out of, it would lock up, give you all sorts of the strange errors about, especially if you tried to do a backup. But definitely interactive container fields are like streaming services. They're very busy and data stream intensive. So be very careful if you allow interactive containers. And sometimes that's the only way that, let's say, you can view certain kinds of documents. And this particular customer needed to be able to view and scroll through multiple page PDF documents and things of this nature. So anyway, that was my experience. We haven't quite got to the bottom, but definitely either we can boost, if we're going to place it with anything else, we better either boost the capacity or it might have to live all by itself, because it certainly was not being starved of the resources that FileMaker typically recommends. But it was not behaving well, so we sent it to what we called our Elba server, where they sentenced, exiled Napoleon. So we occasionally have those kind of servers where we have to do that.
And it's not crashing anymore? That's the good news.
not where it's at. And so we've had to add another temporary production server, but the IT guy says, hey, it's costing us money. Can't you just recombine these things? Well, it's already been on 3 different servers before we put it over to the Elba server. And each time it takes everything down with it. So it does not behave well. So we're trying to unfurl it. But the biggest distinguishing feature is lots of interactive container fields.
Oh, by the way,
just like streaming services, you've got another subscription fee there for that server.
That's that's from digging into it and using a little chat GPT and things of this nature. That gives a little bit more insight, but it's competing for resources of the web publishing engine, bottom line.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about stopping the recording. I actually went over what I said I was going to do. Is that all right?
Yeah, that sounds good. Then we'll have uncensored.
Here we go.
Let me just say that FileMaker is the greatest platform ever. Okay, you can stop recording now.